The frozen ground slammed into my ribs as I tumbled out of the SUV. Snow filled my mouth. Before I could even process what was happening, Derek leaned out the driver's window, his face twisted with something he'd never seen before. Pure contempt. Meet the Grizzly, Dad. Hope you enjoyed the inheritance while it lasted. The door slammed. Taillights glowed red through the falling snow, then vanished around the bend. I was 72 years old, wearing only a flannel shirt and light windbreaker. No phone, no wallet. The temperature was dropping fast. We were 20 miles from the nearest town in the Montana wilderness. My son had just tried to murder me, but Derek had no idea who his father really was. I lay there in the snow for maybe 30 seconds, letting the shock wash through me. Then my training kicked in, and I stood up. My knees protested, but they held. The wind cut through my thin jacket like it wasn't even there. I needed to move, needed to generate heat, needed to think. But first, I needed to understand how he'd gotten here. 6 months ago, my wife Helen died. Cancer took her slowly, painfully, over the course of a year. It held her hand through every treatment, every setback, every moment of hope and despair. When she finally passed, I felt like half of myself had been carved away. Derek came to the funeral. He stood in the back, left early, didn't speak to me. I told myself he was grieving in his own way. A week after we buried Helen, Derek showed up at my house. I was surprised, hopeful, even. Maybe loss would bring us closer. But he didn't come to comfort me. He came to ask about money. The construction business is struggling, he said, sitting in my kitchen like a stranger. Jessica and I have some debts. I was hoping Mom might have left something that could help us through. It explained gently that Helen had set up a trust. Her life insurance, our savings, the house, it was all protected, meant to support me through retirement and then pass to Derek when I died. I couldn't just hand it over. His face had gone hard. So you're saying no. I'm saying it's not mine to give. Your mother wanted it done this way. Head left without another word. Over the next few months, he called twice, both times asking for money. Both times, I explained I couldn't access the trust principal. The second time, Head gotten angry, called me selfish, said I was sitting on a fortune while he and Jessica struggled. Id tried to explain that I was living on a fixed income, that the trust protected both of us, but he wouldn't listen. Then, 2 weeks ago, his tone changed completely. He called sounding emotional, apologetic. Dad, I'm sorry. I've been terrible to you. Grief made me crazy, and I took it out on you. Can we start over? Id wanted to believe him so badly. Wanted my son back. Id liked that, Derek. Good. How about a trip? Just you and me. We could go up to the old cabin near Glacier, like we used to when I was a kid. Well, before I got too old for that stuff. The cabin. Helen and I had taken Derek there when he was young. Head hated it. Complained about the bugs, the lack of television, the long hikes. But maybe he wanted to reconnect with those memories. Maybe losing his mother had changed him. That sounds wonderful, son. We'd driven up 2 days ago. The ride was quiet but not hostile. Derek talked about the business, about Jessica, about how they were working through their problems. He seemed genuine. We stayed the first night at the cabin. It needed work. No one had been there in years. We ate canned soup, talked a little, went to bed early. This morning, Head suggested we drive out to see some of the old trails Helen used to love. It agreed immediately. Anything to feel close to her again. We'd been driving for maybe 20 minutes when Derek suddenly pulled over. This part of the road was remote, dense forest on both sides, no other cars. Why are we stopping? Id asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the back seat and grabbed my phone from my jacket pocket. My wallet, too. Then, my winter coat. Derek, what are you doing? What I should have done months ago. His voice was cold, mechanical. You should have just given me the money when I asked nicely, Dad. What are you talking about? Head pulled out a folder from under his seat. Legal documents. I forged Mom's trust documents, made myself the executor. Once you're gone, he'll have everything. The house, the insurance, all of it. My heart had stuttered. Derek, you can't be serious. They'll find your body in the spring. If they find it at all, tragic accident. Elderly man wandered off during a camping trip. Got disoriented. Happens all the time out here. Then head shoved me. Hard. He'd stumbled out of the SUV into the snow. The door slammed, and he was gone. Now I stood alone on this empty road, watching the snow fall harder. The wind picked up. I could feel the cold seeping into my bones. I estimated the temperature at about 15 degrees, and dropping. Night would come in a few hours. Without shelter, fire, or proper clothing, it'd be hypothermic within 2 hours. Dead by morning. Derek had planned this perfectly. Or so he thought. The boots were good, at least. Broken in, waterproof. No food, no water, no fire-starting equipment. But I had knowledge. I had experience. I had 32 years of training that had become as natural as breathing. First priority, don't panic. Second, get moving. Third, find shelter. I knew roughly where I was. Old Timber Road, about 4 miles from an abandoned ranger station I'd used during training exercises decades ago. If it was still standing, it would have a roof. Maybe some emergency supplies left behind. I started walking, keeping a steady pace. Not too fast to burn energy and sweat, which would freeze. Not too slow to let the cold settle in. I angled into the tree line, where the forest would block some of the wind. As I moved, I watched for landmarks. A lightning-struck pine I recognized. A boulder shaped like a crouching bear. My memory was good. The ranger station sat in a small clearing, half buried in snow. The roof had held, which was the important part. The windows were dark. One was broken, which meant I could get inside. I approached carefully. In winter, animals sometimes sheltered in abandoned buildings. The last thing I needed was to surprise a mountain lion or a bear, but the snow around the building was undisturbed except for small animal tracks. Rabbits, maybe a fox. The front door was locked, secured with a rusted padlock. I moved to the broken window on the side, knocked out the remaining glass carefully with a stick, then climbed through. My ribs screamed where I'd hit the ground earlier. Definitely bruised, maybe cracked, but I was inside. The station was a single room, maybe 20 feet by 20 feet. Empty shelves lined one wall. A metal desk sat in the corner, drawers hanging open. A wood stove stood against the far wall, its pipe extending through the roof. My heart lifted. If I could get a fire going, I'd survive the night. I searched the room methodically, found a wool blanket in a metal locker, musty but intact. A box of waterproof matches with 3 matches left. A can of beans, so old the label had faded to nothing. But food was food. A dented tin cup, and best of all, a hand-crank emergency radio with dead batteries. It wasn't much, but it was everything. I checked the stove. The flue was clear. I gathered kindling from broken furniture, used the birch bark I'd collected, and built a small fire. Used one precious match. It caught on the first try. Warmth, blessed warmth. I held my hands over the flames, feeling returning to my fingers. Once the fire was stable, I added larger pieces of wood from a broken chair. Then I examined the window it'd come through. Cold air was pouring in. I found some old newspapers and stuffed them into the gaps, then hung the wool blanket over the whole thing. Not perfect, but it would help. As darkness fell, I opened the can of beans with a screwdriver from the desk, ate them cold. They tasted like metal and salt and survival. I was alive. Derek thought I was dying in the snow somewhere, but I was warm and fed and thinking clearly. Tomorrow, I'd hike out to the highway, flag down a car, get to the police, tell them everything. But then, I noticed something. Near the wood stove, a floorboard sat slightly higher than the others, like it had been pried up and replaced. Id spent enough years in buildings like this to know what that meant. Someone had hidden something. I used the screwdriver to lever up the board. Underneath, in a shallow space, was a duffel bag. I pulled it out, my hands shaking. Not from cold now, from a feeling I couldn't name. Inside the bag, an elderly man's wallet. I opened it. Driver's license for Walter Brennan, age 68. The photo showed a kind-faced man with white hair and smile lines around his eyes. Prescription bottles with Walter's name. Reading glasses. A watch. Expensive-looking, engraved on the back. To Walter, love always, Margaret. And newspaper clippings. Carefully folded, I spread them out by the firelight. Local man, missing after hiking trip. The article was dated 2 years ago. Walter Brennan, 68, reported missing after going camping with his stepson. Last seen near Glacier National Park. Search called off after 2 weeks due to winter storms. Presumed dead from exposure. The next clipping. Family mourns missing father. A photo of a woman, maybe 40, standing next to a man I recognized immediately. Derek. The caption identified them as Jessica and Derek Brennan. My hands went numb again, but not from cold. Derek married Jessica Brennan, took her last name for his construction business. He'd thought it was odd at the time, but had said something about her family having better credit. Walter was Jessica's father, and Derek had done this before. I read through the other clippings with growing horror. Walter had been a widower, his wife Margaret having died 3 years before his disappearance. Head had substantial savings, life insurance. Jessica was his only child. After Walter was declared dead, she inherited everything. Derek married Jessica 6 months after Walter disappeared. Started his construction business shortly after with investment capital. My son hadn't just tried to kill me. Had already successfully killed Jessica's father. Used the exact same method. Remote location, winter conditions, abandonment. And everyone believed it was an accident. I sat in that ranger station, holding a dead man's belongings, understanding with perfect clarity that I wasn't Derek's first victim, just his latest. The grief that washed over me wasn't for myself, it was for Walter, this stranger who'd died alone in the cold, whose family thought had simply gotten lost, who'd been murdered by the man his daughter loved. I thought about Walter's last moments. Had he been confused, wondering why his stepson was driving away? Had he called out, begged, like I had? Had he died hoping it was a mistake, that Derek would come back? Rage followed the grief, white-hot and clarifying. Derek thought he was smart, thought he'd gotten away with it once, so he could do it again, thought I was just another obstacle to remove, another inheritance to steal. He was wrong. I carefully repacked Walter's belongings. These were evidence, proof, but I couldn't just walk out of here and go to the police. Not yet. Derek would have an alibi by now. He'd be playing the concerned son, reporting me missing, organizing searches. If I showed up accusing him of murder, he'd claim I was delusional from exposure, that the cold had affected my mind. I needed more than Walter's hidden belongings. I needed undeniable proof of what Derek had done. To Walter. To me. To Jessica, who I now realized was a victim too. A plan began forming. Dangerous. Risky, but necessary. He'd let Derek think his plan had worked. Stay missing long enough to gather evidence. Then I'd destroy him. I fed the fire, wrapped myself in the wool blanket, and settled in for the night. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, I was warm and angry and more determined than I'd been in years. Derek had tried to end my story in that forest. Instead, had just given me a purpose that burned hotter than any fire. I woke before dawn to the sound of a helicopter. The fire had burned down to embers. I quickly smothered them, not wanting smoke to give away my position. Through the broken window, I could see searchlights sweeping across the forest canopy. Derek had reported me missing. The search was on. I smiled grimly. He was playing his part perfectly. The devoted son, desperate to find his lost father. Probably crying for the cameras right now. Let him perform. I had work to do. I ate the rest of the beans, packed Walter's belongings carefully into the duffel bag, and prepared to move. The helicopter passed overhead twice more that morning, but I stayed under tree cover. By mid-morning, the sky had cleared. Temperature had risen to maybe 25 degrees. Manageable. I knew these mountains. There was a hiking trail about 2 miles east that would take me toward the highway. I could make it in a day if I was careful. The hike was slow but steady. I rationed my energy, stopped frequently to check my surroundings. My ribs ached with every breath, but the pain was manageable. I'd survived worse during training exercises. By late afternoon on the second day, I reached the highway. But I didn't flag down the first car I saw. Instead, I waited, hidden in the tree line, watching the traffic. I needed someone who wouldn't ask too many questions, someone who wouldn't immediately call the police. Finally, a long-haul truck pulled into the rest stop. The driver climbed out, stretched, headed for the bathroom. I approached when he came back out. "Excuse me, sir. I got separated from my hiking group a few days ago. Been trying to find my way out. Any chance you could give me a ride to Whitefish?" The driver, a man in his 50s named Frank, looked me over. Saw an old man, dirty and tired, but not threatening. "You okay? You need a hospital?" "No, just need to get to town. I've got people waiting for me there." Frank hesitated, then nodded. "All right, hop in." We drove in relative silence. Frank asked a few questions about where I'd been hiking, and I gave vague answers. He didn't push. At Whitefish, I asked him to drop me at a motel on the edge of town. "You sure you don't need me to call someone?" Frank asked. "I appreciate it, but I'm fine. Just need a hot shower and a phone." He drove away, and I checked into the motel using cash I'd hidden in my boot. An old habit from my search and rescue days. Always keep emergency cash somewhere it won't get lost. The clerk didn't ask for ID, didn't care that I looked rough. Just took my money and handed me a key. In the room, I stood under hot water for 20 minutes, letting the heat soak into my bones. Then I walked to the public library. The computer system was simple enough. I searched for Walter Brennan's missing person case. Found dozens of articles. The story was exactly as the clippings described. Walter, a retired postal worker, went camping with his stepson Derek. Never came back. Massive search effort. Eventually called off due to weather. Jessica had given several interviews. In each one, she described Derek as devastated. They were so close. Derek keeps blaming himself, wondering if he could have done something differently. The performance was masterful. Derek played the guilt-ridden stepson perfectly. I searched deeper, found Walter's obituary. Beloved father and grandfather, survived by daughter Jessica Brennan and son-in-law Derek Brennan. Grandfather? I searched for Jessica's social media, found photos of her with 2 children, a boy and a girl, maybe 8 and 6, smiling in family photos. Derek was in some of them, always with his arm around Jessica, always smiling. The perfect family man. I dug into property records. Jessica's mother Margaret had died 3 years before Walter disappeared. Left the house to Jessica, but it had a mortgage. Walter had life insurance. $300,000. After he was declared dead, the payout went to Jessica as beneficiary. 6 months later, Derek and Jessica got married. Derek started Brennan Construction with investment capital. The timeline was damning, but it wasn't proof. Not the kind that would hold up in court. I needed to see Derek in person. Needed to know what he was doing, what he was saying, how he was playing this. After dark, I walked to my own house. The house Helen and I had shared for 40 years. I stayed in the shadows across the street, hidden behind a neighbor's hedge. The lights were on. Through the front window, I could see Derek sitting in my living room. My living room. 2 police officers sat across from him. Derek's face was buried in his hands. His shoulders shook like he was crying. One officer patted his shoulder. They talked for a while, then stood to leave. Derek walked them to the door, wiping his eyes, shaking their hands. The perfect performance. After the police left, I watched Derek close the door, watched him walk back into the living room, and then I saw his face change. The grief disappeared. The tears stopped. He smiled, actually smiled, poured himself a drink from my liquor cabinet. Whiskey that Helen had bought me for my last birthday. Then Jessica came down the stairs. She looked tired, worn. Derek said something to her. I couldn't hear through the window, but I saw her flinch. He grabbed her arm, roughly, pulled her close, said something else, his face inches from hers. Jessica's expression was pure fear. Derek shoved her toward the stairs. She stumbled, caught herself on the railing. He turned away, back to his drink, dismissing her. Jessica ran upstairs, and I heard a door slam even from across the street. Derek stood alone in my living room, sipping whiskey, looking satisfied. That's when I understood. Jessica didn't know. She had no idea her father had been murdered. She thought it was an accident. She thought Derek was a good man, grieving alongside her. She was a victim, too, trapped with a monster who'd killed her father and was now trying to kill me. Derek threw his glass against the wall. It shattered. He laughed. Actually laughed. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something, and smiled again at whatever he read. I needed to get into that house. Into Derek's office. If Head kept detailed records for Walter's murder, he might have done the same for mine. Psychopaths often did. They thought they were too smart to get caught. But I couldn't do it while Derek was home. It'd have to wait for him to leave, and it'd have to be ready for what I might find. The next morning, I watched from my hiding spot as Derek left the house at 8:30. He was dressed in clean clothes, freshly shaved, looking every bit the concerned son heading to coordinate search efforts. I waited 30 minutes to be sure he wouldn't come back. Then I approached the house. Helen had hidden a spare key under a specific stone in her garden. Shed placed it there years ago, insisted I memorize which stone. In case of emergencies, Shed said. This qualified. I found the stone, found the key, and let myself in through the back door. The house smelled like lavender, Helen's scent. Shed kept lavender sachets in every room. The smell hit me like a physical blow. I stood in the kitchen, where we'd cooked together, where we'd had coffee every morning for 40 years, and I had to grip the counter to stay standing. But I couldn't afford to break down. Not yet. I moved quickly to Derek's office. The door was closed, but not locked. Inside, everything was obsessively organized. File cabinets labeled by category. Desk clear except for a laptop and a single pen positioned perfectly parallel to the edge. I started with the filing cabinet marked Estate Documents, Helen's Will. The original, in her handwriting, signed and notarized. Everything to a trust with me as trustee. Derek as beneficiary after my death. And beneath it, another version, professionally printed. Same language, but with one critical change. Derek, named as executor with immediate access to funds. The signatures looked identical, but I'd watched Helen sign her name thousands of times. I knew the slight hesitation she always had on the loop of the H, the way the N in her last name always tilted slightly right. This signature was perfect. Too perfect. Forged. I took photos with the phone I'd bought at a convenience store with my emergency cash. I went through more files, found Derek's construction business records. The company had received a capital investment of $250,000, 8 months after Walter died. The source was listed as family loan. Walter's life insurance had been $300,000. $50,000 for the funeral and estate costs. $250,000 into Derek's business. My phone buzzed. I froze, then realized it was just a low battery warning. I needed to move faster. I heard a car in the driveway. My heart stopped. Derek was back. I'd miscalculated how long he'd be gone. I shoved the files back into place, closed the cabinet, moved toward the door, but then I heard footsteps on the stairs, coming from inside the house. Not Derek returning. Someone who'd been here the whole time. Jessica appeared at the top of the stairs, saw me standing in the hallway outside Derek's office, and screamed, "Jessica, please don't scream. I need you to listen, Gavin." Her voice was shaking. "They said you were lost in the mountains. Derek's been searching." "Derek isn't searching for me, Jessica. He left me there to die." She started to back away. "That's crazy. Derek's been devastated. He barely sleeps. He keeps saying he should have kept a closer eye on you. Just like he did to your father, Walter." Jessica froze on the stairs. Her face went white. "What are you talking about? My dad died in a hiking accident." I pulled out my phone, showed her the photos I'd taken at the ranger station. Walter's driver's license, his watch, his prescription bottles. I found these hidden in an abandoned ranger station, the same area where your father went missing. Derek took me there 3 days ago, shoved me out of his vehicle in the snow and drove away. He told me he'd forged documents to steal my wife's estate. He said they'd find my body in spring. Jessica sank down onto the stairs. No, Derek wouldn't. He did it to Walter first. Then he married you and got access to your father's life insurance. Now he's trying to do it to me. You're confused. The cold, the exposure, it's made you. I spent 32 years as a wilderness survival instructor, Jessica. I'm not confused. I'm alive because I know how to survive. And I found your father's belongings because Derek hid them there. He kept them. Why would he do that unless he'd killed Walter and wanted a trophy? Tears streamed down Jessica's face. Derek loved my dad. They went camping together all the time. Dad trusted him, which made it easy to kill him and make it look like an accident. I showed her the photos of the estate documents, the forged will, the construction business capital that came from Walter's life insurance. Derek has been planning this for years, has done it before, and is doing it again. I need you to help me prove it. Jessica was shaking her head, but I could see doubt creeping into her eyes. Even if this is true, we should call the police right now. We need more proof. Derek's smart. He'll have an alibi. He'll claim I'm senile, that you're having a breakdown from grief. We need something undeniable. Like what? His computer. Does he keep it password protected? Jessica nodded slowly. He never lets me use it. Says it's business files. Can you get into it? She hesitated. He writes his passwords in a notebook, keeps it in his desk. He doesn't think I'm smart enough to figure that out. Show me. We went into the office together. Jessica pulled open the bottom desk drawer, moved some files, and retrieved a small leather notebook. Inside were dozens of passwords, labeled by site or purpose. One was labeled simply insurance. Jessica typed it into Derek's laptop. The encrypted folder opened. Inside were 2 folders. One labeled W Project, one labeled G Project. Walter. Gavin. I opened Walter's folder first. What we found made Jessica vomit in the office trash can. A detailed timeline of Walter's routines. Where he went, when, with whom. Financial records showing his assets, his insurance policies, his property. Photos of remote locations, all dated weeks before Walter disappeared. A draft of the missing person report Derek would later file, written before Walter was even missing. And a document titled Interview Preparation. It was a script, literally a script for how Derek would act when questioned by police, what emotions to show, when to cry, what to say about Walter. Remember, grief-stricken but composed. Blame yourself slightly to seem genuine. Jessica read it with shaking hands. He planned everything. Keep reading. There were notes on how to comfort Jessica, how to seem supportive while isolating her from her friends, make her dependent. She'll be easier to control and less likely to question anything. Jessica's hands clenched into fists. Then we opened my folder, the same meticulous planning, my routines, my financial assets, Helen's estate, the trust documents Derek planned to forge, photos of the ranger station area taken 2 months ago, a timeline for when to report me missing, carefully calculated to establish his alibi. And notes. Clinical, cold notes. Subject is older than W, less likely to survive exposure. Estimate 72 hours maximum in current weather conditions. Likelihood of body recovery. Low. Spring thaw may expose remains, but by then, estate will be settled. Subject. He called me Subject. There was more. A document titled Project Management. It was a business plan for murder. Derek had written about both killings in detail, described the planning phase, the execution, the aftermath. He wrote about watching Walter stumble into the woods, about how satisfying it felt to see the confusion on Walter's face. He wrote about me. Subject showed expected shock when informed of plan. Attempted to reason, appeal to familial bond, ineffective. Subject was removed from vehicle at coordinates listed above. Weather conditions optimal. Probability of survival, negligible. And then, most chilling, post-project review. Execution, cleaner than W project. Less emotional attachment to subject made process more efficient. Future projects should prioritize emotional distance. Future projects. Jessica found it. A list of potential targets. Her elderly Aunt Dorothy, who owned a paid-off farm worth $400,000. My brother Thomas, who'd mentioned in passing he was updating his will. Even Jessica herself. Long-term liability. Useful for now, but may require elimination once assets are secured. Jessica read her own name on that list and something broke inside her. She made a sound I'd never heard another human make. Raw, primal. The sound of a person realizing they've been sleeping next to a monster. I held her while she sobbed. This woman I barely knew, who'd lost her father to my son, who'd been living with a killer for 2 years. When she could breathe again, she looked at me with red eyes. We have to stop him. We will, but we have to be smart. If we go to the police now, Derek will claim we fabricated this. We need to catch him in an undeniable position. How? I thought about it. We let him think his plan is working. I stay missing. You act normal. We copy all these files, make backups. Then we wait for Derek to make a mistake. Jessica nodded. I can act normal. I've been doing it for 2 years. We spent the next hour copying files to multiple flash drives. Every photo, every document, every word of Derek's murder journal. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, but I needed more than documents. I needed Derek to reveal himself completely. Can you hide a camera in here? I asked. Something that will record when he's alone. My phone, Jessica said. I can set it to record and hide it on the bookshelf. We positioned it carefully, making sure it captured the desk and the door. When Derek comes home, act like everything is normal, I said. Don't give him any reason to suspect. Can you do that? Jessica's jaw set. I've been acting for 2 years. I can do 1 more day. He'll be in the basement. If anything goes wrong, scream. He'll hear you. She nodded. I heard Derek's car in the driveway 20 minutes later. Derek came through the front door whistling. Actually whistling. I was hidden in the basement, listening through the floor. Jessica was upstairs, playing her part. Jess, you home? In the kitchen. Her voice was steady. I was impressed by her control. I heard Derek's footsteps. Search is being scaled back. They think Dad probably fell into a ravine. Weathers made it impossible to cover all the ground. They're saying we might not find him until spring thaw. A pause. Then, Jessica's voice, perfectly calibrated to sound devastated. Oh God. You mean he's been out there all this time? Hey, come here. Derek's voice was gentle, comforting. The same voice Head used to manipulate her for 2 years. We did everything we could. Dad was old. He must have gotten confused. Wandered off. It's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault. The hypocrisy made my blood boil. I gripped the basement stairs, railing to keep from rushing up there. I just keep thinking about him, alone in the cold, Jessica said. Perfect grief, perfect performance. I know. Me too. But we have to start thinking about practical things. The memorial service, the estate, getting our lives back on track. There it was, less than a week. And Derek was already talking about the money. It feels too soon, Jessica said. I know it does. But Dad would want us to move forward. He'd want us to be okay financially. That's why he set up the trust the way he did. The way Derek forged it, he meant. They talked for another hour. Derek was attentive, loving, everything a concerned husband should be, playing his role perfectly. After dinner, Derek went to his office. I heard the door close. 30 seconds later, I heard him curse, loud. Jessica and I had been careful. Wed put everything back exactly as Wed found it. But apparently, not careful enough. Derek's office door slammed open. Jessica, get up here. Now. Jessica's footsteps on the stairs. Slow. Measured. I crept up from the basement, staying out of sight. What's wrong? Jessica asked. Someone's been on my computer. What? That's impossible. I've been here all day, and no one else has been in the house. The browser history shows the encrypted folder was accessed. Did you go through my computer? No. I don't even know your passwords. Don't lie to me. Derek's voice had changed. The gentle husband was gone. This was the real Derek. Cold, dangerous. I moved closer, staying in the shadows of the hallway. I'm not lying, Jessica said, her voice shaking. But was it acting or real fear? I couldn't tell anymore. Derek grabbed her face, forcing her to look at him. What did you see? Nothing. I didn't touch your computer. He slapped her, hard. The sound echoed through the house. Something in me snapped. I started to move, but then Jessica spoke again. Fine. Yes. I looked. I saw everything. Derek's face went through a series of emotions. Shock. Rage. Calculation. How much did you read? Enough. Enough to know you killed my father. The words hung in the air between them. Then Derek smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Took you long enough. I was starting to think you'd never figure it out. You murdered him. For money. I solved a problem. Your father was holding on to assets he wasn't using. You were too sentimental to push him for help. Someone had to be practical. He loved you. He trusted you. He was a means to an end, Jessica. Just like you are. Jessica's face crumpled. Years of manipulation, of abuse, of lies, all crystallizing in that moment. I brought you into our lives. I introduced you to my father. This is my fault. Finally, your understanding. You were always just access. To Walter, to his money. Did you really think I loved you? He was confessing, admitting everything. The phone on the bookshelf was recording every word. What about Gavin? Jessica asked. What about him? The old man's dead by now, frozen in the mountains. They'll find him eventually, rule it an accident, and he'll inherit everything through the forged trust documents. You're insane. I'm practical. There's a difference. Derek moved to his desk, opened a drawer. But now we have a problem. You know too much. He pulled out a prescription bottle. I recognized it. Helen's pain medication from when she was dying. You're going to be so distraught over losing Gavin that you take your own life. He started moving toward Jessica with the pills. That's when I stepped into the doorway. No, she's not. Derek spun around. The color drained from his face. No, you're dead. You're supposed to be dead. Surprise, son. 32 years as a wilderness survival instructor. Did you really think a little cold would kill me? Derek's eyes darted between Jessica and me, calculating, planning. Dad, thank God. You're alive. Jessica and I was just, save it. I heard everything. You're done. Derek's expression changed. The mask dropped completely. What I saw underneath was empty, soulless. You were always weak, he said. You and Mom both. Sitting on all that money, living in that house, and for what? You weren't using it. You were just existing. I could do so much more with it. So you decided to kill me. I decided to solve a problem, just like I solved the Walter problem, just like I'm about to solve the Jessica problem. He lunged, not at me, at Jessica, with the fireplace, poker head grabbed from beside the door. I moved on instinct. 32 years of training, of handling emergencies, of staying calm in crisis. I stepped into his path, caught his wrist, used his momentum to throw him off balance. Derek was 42, stronger than me, but I'd spent 3 decades teaching people how to survive when everything went wrong, how to fight when you had to, how to use leverage and positioning over raw strength. We crashed through the coffee table. Glass shattered. Derek swung the poker. I rolled, felt it whistle past my head, came up, landed a punch to his solar plexus. He gasped, stumbled back. Jessica was screaming into her phone. Police! Send police! There's an attempted murder at. Derek heard that and panicked. Tried to run for the door. I tackled him. We went down hard. My ribs screamed where they were already bruised, but I held on. Derek thrashed, trying to break free. Get off me! You're ruining everything. It was already ruined, Derek. The moment you decided to kill for money. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. Derek tried one more time to throw me off. I shifted my weight, got him in a hold I'd learned in search and rescue training. He couldn't move without hurting himself. Stop fighting, I said. It's over. No. No. I had it all planned. It was perfect. You underestimated me. Jessica stood over us, holding the flash drive. We have everything, Derek. Every file. Every photo. Every word you wrote. The police are going to see exactly what you are. Derek's face cycled through emotions. Rage, desperation, and finally, a chilling calculation. He started crying, real-looking tears. Dad, please. I'm sorry. I was desperate. The debts, the pressure. I wasn't thinking clearly. Please, you have to forgive me. Save the performance. I heard what you really are. The police burst through the door, weapons drawn. On the ground, hands where we can see them, I released Derek, raised my hands, moved slowly away. Officers, this man attacked me. Derek said immediately. Has been missing for days. I think the exposure affected his mind. Has delusional, making accusations. We have recorded evidence of him confessing to murder, Jessica said, holding up her phone. Everything is on here. The lead officer, a woman in her 40s, looked between all of us. Everyone calm down. Well, sort this out at the station. They cuffed Derek. Read him his rights. He continued protesting, claiming Wed fabricated everything, that I was confused. But I saw the moment he realized it wasn't working, the moment the mask dropped again, and his eyes went cold and empty. They took him away. Paramedics checked Jessica and me. I had a cut above my eye that needed butterfly bandages. Bruised ribs, but nothing broken. Jessica was physically unharmed but in shock. We gave initial statements. handed over the flash drives with all the evidence. As they loaded Derek into the patrol car, he looked at me through the window. No more pretending. No more masks. Just emptiness. And I realized my son had been gone for a long time. Maybe Head never really existed at all. The police station was chaos. Detective Angela Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her mid-40s, took lead on the case. She listened to our story with the kind of careful attention that told me she was good at her job. "Let me make sure I understand," she said. "Your son abandoned you in the wilderness, intending to kill you. You survived using wilderness training, found evidence connecting him to another murder. And now you have files from his computer documenting both crimes." "That's correct. And Miss Brennan, you're alleging that Derek murdered your father 2 years ago." Jessica nodded, her hands shaking around a paper cup of coffee. "I didn't know. I thought it was an accident. But Gavin found my father's belongings, hidden in the mountains, and Derek's files. They describe everything." Detective Martinez called in her team. Digital forensics specialists arrived and took the flash drives. Within an hour, they confirmed the files were authentic. "Metadata shows these documents were created over an 18-month period," one technician reported. "No signs of tampering. The files originated from Derek Brennan's computer. His digital fingerprint is all over them." Meanwhile, Derek sat in an interrogation room with his lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit who kept insisting this was all a misunderstanding. "My client is a respected businessman. His father is clearly suffering from exposure-related trauma. We'll be pressing charges for defamation and false accusation." Detective Martinez slid copies of Derek's files across the table. "Explain these." The lawyer read for 5 minutes. His face went pale. He leaned over to Derek, whispered urgently. Derek smiled, actually smiled. "Those are fictional. Creative writing. I was working on a novel. A novel that includes GPS coordinates matching where we found Walter Brennan's belongings," Martinez asked. "A novel that includes your stepfather-in-law's actual financial records? A novel that describes in detail how to forge estate documents, which matches the forgeries we found in your possession." Derek's smile faded. "We're reopening the Walter Brennan case," Martinez said, "and we're getting warrants for all your properties." The search of Derek's house yielded the forged estate documents, handwritten practice signatures, financial records showing Head already spent money he didn't legally have. But the biggest discovery came from Derek's storage unit. Detective Martinez called me at 2 in the morning. "Mr. Patterson, we need you to come to the station." Her voice was shaken. That scared me. At the station, she led me to a private room. Jessica was already there, looking gray. He made sure he wouldn't survive. The cruelty was staggering. Over the next few days, the investigation expanded. Forensic accountants traced Derek's finances. Head forged the estate documents and executed them before I was even officially missing. Sold my house to a developer for $400,000 just 3 days after abandoning me in the forest. The developer had already demolished the house. Started construction on a new development. When Detective Martinez told me, I had to sit down. The house where Helen and I had raised Derek. Where Wed celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. Where Helen had died in our bedroom with her hand in mine. Where 40 years of memories lived. Gone. Reduced to rubble. Sold by my son before my body was even cold. Derek had held an estate sale the same day. Sold everything. Helen's jewelry, our wedding photos, the quilt her grandmother had made, all of it. Gone. I drove to where my house used to be. Stood looking at the empty lot. Foundation exposed. Trees Wed, planted together. Cut down. Helen's garden, paved over. I broke down, right there on the sidewalk. Broke down like I hadn't allowed myself to do since Helen died. Jessica found me there an hour later. Sat beside me on the curb. "I'm sorry," she said. "You have nothing to apologize for. He was my husband. I brought him into your life. He fooled both of us. He fooled everyone. We sat there together, two people wad, lost everything to the same monster. The media picked up the story. Son's murder plot foiled by father's survival skills ran in every major outlet. Reporters camped outside the police station. Wanted interviews. I refused them all. This wasn't entertainment. This was tragedy. Derek's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. Offered to plead guilty to manslaughter. Claimed diminished capacity from financial stress. The prosecutors refused. The evidence was overwhelming. 2 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of first-degree murder, fraud, forgery, evidence tampering. Derek demanded a trial, convinced he could charm a jury. 4 months later, we sat in a courtroom while prosecutors laid out the case. They presented Derek's journal. Read entries aloud. The courtroom went silent as Derek's own words described planning Walter's death, described watching him stumble into the woods, described the satisfaction of a clean execution. Jurors looked sick. They presented the financial evidence, showed how Derek had systematically planned to profit from both murders. They presented my testimony. I described being shoved into the snow. Derek's cold words, finding Walter's belongings. Jessica testified about years of manipulation and abuse, about discovering her father had been murdered, about Derek's attempt to kill her when she learned the truth. Derek's defense was pathetic, claimed the journal was fiction, claimed I was senile, claimed Jessica was having a breakdown. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty, on all counts. Derek showed no emotion when the verdict was read, just stared straight ahead. At sentencing, the judge looked at Derek with barely concealed disgust. You murdered a man who trusted you, attempted to murder your own father and your wife, all for money. You are a danger to everyone who has the misfortune of loving you. You will never hurt another family. Life without parole for Walter's murder. Consecutive sentences for the attempted murders. Derek would die in prison. As they led him away, he looked at me one last time, smiled. That same empty smile. You should have just given me the money, Dad. Those were the last words my son ever said to me. The civil litigation came next. I sued Derek's estate for wrongful attempted murder, sued the property developer for knowingly purchasing fraudulently sold property. The developer tried to fight, but the evidence was overwhelming. They'd rushed the purchase, ignored irregularities in the paperwork, because they wanted the land. They settled for $350,000, the equivalent value of my property. Derek's remaining assets were seized and sold. The boat Head bought with my money, his car, everything, added another $70,000. Jessica legally reclaimed the money Derek had stolen from Walter's estate. The insurance company, embarrassed they'd paid out on a fraudulent claim, settled with her for $300,000 rather than face a public trial. We sat in her lawyer's office after the final settlement, looking at numbers that represented so much pain. I don't want this money, Jessica said. It cost my father his life. I know, I said, but we can use it for something that matters. That's how the Walter Brennan Foundation was born. We used the combined settlements to create an organization supporting families of murder victims, helping them navigate the legal system, providing therapy and financial assistance, raising awareness about financial elder abuse. The foundation's first office opened in Whitefish 6 months after Derek's conviction. Jessica ran it. Shed gone back to school for social work, channeling her pain into helping others. I used my portion of the settlement to buy a small cabin near Glacier National Park, not far from where Derek had abandoned me. I needed to reclaim that wilderness, to make it mine again, not his. The cabin was simple. 2 rooms, a wood stove, a porch overlooking the mountains. I filled it with a few belongings that had survived Derek's estate sale. Neighbors had bought some of Helen's things and returned them to me when they learned the truth. Her favorite coffee mug, a photo album, small treasures that meant everything. I started teaching again. The local youth center asked if I'd run wilderness survival courses for at-risk teenagers, kids who were heading down bad paths, who needed structure and purpose. I said yes. Teaching those kids became my purpose. They came to me angry, lost, convinced they had no future. I took them into the mountains and showed them they were stronger than they knew. We learned how to build fires, purify water, navigate by stars. But mostly, we learned how to survive when life knocked you down, how to keep going when everything seemed hopeless. One kid, Marcus, came to me at 17, heading toward gang life, angry at the world. I took him camping for a weekend. He fought me on everything at first, complained about the cold, the work, the discomfort. Then, on the second night, sitting by the fire, he asked, "How did you survive when your own kid tried to kill you?" It'd been honest. Some days I'm still figuring that out, but I decided I wasn't going to let him win. Wasn't going to let what he did define the rest of my life. Marcus stared at the fire. My dad's in prison. Left when I was 6. I'm so angry all the time. Anger's okay. It's what you do with it that matters. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it to build something better. A year later, Marcus graduated high school, got accepted to forestry school, became a junior park ranger. He told me I saved his life. I told him he saved mine too. Jessica and I had dinner together every Sunday. Shed met someone new, a high school history teacher named Scott. Kind, patient, everything Derek wasn't. I walked her down the aisle when they got married, stood in the place her father should have occupied. We both cried. 2 years after Derek's conviction, I sat on my cabin porch watching the sunset. The mountains were purple in the fading light. The air smelled like pine and coming snow. I thought about everything I'd survived. The cold forest, the betrayal, the loss of my home and my son. But I also thought about what I'd built from the ruins, the foundation helping families, the kids I'd taught who were now thriving, the relationship with Jessica that had grown from shared trauma into genuine family. Derek had tried to end my story in those woods, thought abandoning me in the cold would be the final chapter. He was wrong. That forest was my beginning, not my end. Finding Walter's belongings gave me purpose. Surviving gave me strength. Fighting back gave me justice. And helping others survive their own wilderness, literal and metaphorical, gave me meaning. A letter arrived from the prison that week. Derek's handwriting. I let it sit on my table for 3 days before opening it. Inside, a lengthy apology. Claims Head found religion in prison. That Head changed. That he understood what Head done was wrong. Asking me to visit, to forgive. I read it once. Then I walked to my wood stove and fed it to the flames. Some relationships can't be salvaged. Some people can't be saved. That's not giving up. That's wisdom earned through pain. I'd forgiven Derek in my heart, not for him, but for me, so I could move forward without carrying that weight. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean pretending he hadn't murdered Walter and tried to murder Jessica and me. It didn't mean giving him access to hurt anyone else. Even emotionally, the letter burned. I watched the paper curl and blacken. Then I went back to the porch and watched the stars come out. Helen would have been proud of what I'd built. The foundation, the teaching, the new family I'd found with Jessica and Scott. I missed her every day. But I'd learned to carry that grief alongside joy, to let both exist together. The wilderness taught me one final lesson. You don't survive by avoiding the cold. You survive by knowing how to build a fire, and then by teaching others to do the same. My son thought leaving me in that forest would be my end. He was wrong. It was my beginning. I learned that survival isn't about never falling down. It's about knowing how to get back up, and then reaching down to help the next person rise. That's the legacy I'm building now. Not the one Derek tried to destroy, but the one he accidentally set in motion. In trying to end my story, he gave me the most important chapter yet. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from Marcus. Had been accepted to a master's program in environmental conservation. He wanted me to know I was the reason. That learning to survive in the wilderness had taught him he could survive anything. You showed me that being broken doesn't mean being defeated, he said. I thought about that after we hung up, about how Derek had tried to break me. Had, in many ways, succeeded. The son Id loved was gone. The house Id cherished was destroyed. The life Id planned was over. But I wasn't defeated. Id taken the broken pieces and built something new, something that helped people, something that honored Walter's memory and Helen's legacy. That night, I added more wood to my stove, made tea in Helen's mug, sat on the porch, wrapped in a wool blanket, the same type of blanket that had kept me alive in that ranger station. The mountains were dark against the star-filled sky. Somewhere out there was the place Derek had abandoned me, the place I'd faced death and chosen to live. I'd walked out of that wilderness with Walter's belongings and a determination to seek justice. I'd faced my son in court and watched him go to prison. I'd rebuilt my life from nothing, and I'd learned the most important lesson of all. You can't control what people do to you, even people you love, even your own children. But you can control what you do next. I chose to survive, to fight, to help others. That choice made all the difference. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone you trusted betray you completely? Someone who was supposed to love you but chose to hurt you instead? How did you find the strength to move forward? What helped you rebuild when everything fell apart? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our pain helps us heal. And if this story touched you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Share it with someone who might need to hear that survival is possible, even after the worst betrayal. Thank you for listening to my story, for sitting with me through the pain and the healing, for believing that even in our darkest moments, we can find the strength to build a fire and light the way forward. May you always find your way out of the wilderness, whatever form it takes. And may you always have the strength to reach back and help the next person find their way too. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you're stronger than you know.